Привет из Сингапура! С вами передача «Голубь мира», где разбираем крутые навыки. Спрашиваем на английском, отвечаем на русском. Подтягивайте язык или смотрите перевод в тайм-кодах. Let's talk about sprint and let's start with the definition.
Sprint, it's usually a style when we run at short distance. Sprint, usually we run very fast. The same way Japanese people says that fast, it is slow, but without any break, without any stops. When we start to work with some agile style, or maybe Kanban, or just in time, or some other kind of flexible development for the project or software, we usually run short distances, but for several times. And Split is a great way how to organize your weeks, to create a prototype and then to test it, then to implement changes and then run in a minimal valuable product.
So what are the principles, fundamentals of this vehicle and how to run it?
First, you should divide the way or the road or roadmap of your project for short sprints. Usually it is weeks. I was trying to make 5 days or maybe 10 days or maybe 15 days or 14 days, but it doesn't work. I don't know why, but people like to measure the time of working on the project for weeks, work days, or for months. And for owner, it is very strange because owner do not think about weekends or starting or end of the day. He wants or she wants to make it as fast as possible. Then you should create some special rules who will lead the company or the team. Then you should install some kind of Kanban box, Kanban maybe a desk or Trello or something like this, or maybe it would be physical one, a whiteboard with markers, or maybe it would be electronical one in internet or in some shareable resources. Then you should install backlog and start to generate ideas. Ideas will give you hypotheses what you could do in the nearest future. Then you should measure them in some kind of periods for complexity, for longitude, and then you should start to move these cards, your ideas, from one row to another, from idea to coding, from coding to testing, from testing to documentation, from documentation to production, and so on.
Probably different teams, they might be running sprints on a different speed or efficiency or maybe in a style. So what are the levels of mastery we need to be aware of in order to make sure we start properly, we run, we finish on time, and actually entire sprint would be efficient?
First step, when you know just the ages, рамки, ages.
Borders,
If you know just the borders,
limits.
just small peanuts information about sprint, and you just imitate how to do it. So you write what we should do, and then you ask why it was done, and it doesn't help. Second level, you have already working with sprints, and you know how to deal with backlog, how to make documentation, how to make testing, how to choose the right ideas, and how to understand which is workable and which is like a fantasy and will not pass the customer. And third level, sorry, when you already have been in sprint, for example, for several times, and you already know which your people are working fast, which slow, which need assistance, who will be better moved from the customer to the documentation and from testing to development, and vice versa.
Obviously, sprint is something that runs on a tight schedule with a pretty much straightforward goals, a lot of people involved, and maybe a lot of artifacts to be generated, and maybe a lot of teams or other divisions to communicate with. So definitely with such a lot of moving parts, it's prone to error. So what other common mistakes people in the team could make while running their sprint?
First kind of mistake when everyone do not ask other people for the help. For example, I already miss the time and I have a deadline. I started to work at nights, but do not tell anyone about this. I became tired, I became sad, I became inefficient, and suddenly everyone realized that because of me, one wheel of the wagon will not run. So I am not just a loser for job was not done, but I also a reason that car doesn't work, doesn't go the proper way. Second, when people trying to make sabotage or to make competitions each with another, so they work for themselves but not for the team. And third level, when everyone ask another person or people how I can make their work more smoothly, or maybe in some fields of our communications, how could I improve? So that no one would be offended, no one would be lost, and everyone would be happy because we have a common result. Not a single man show, but everyone's show.
There's also one question that I do want to ask about mode of work. For example, some of the companies, especially big ones, when they do want to run a small teams, they want, given that they work remotely, or some of the people might be on the offsite or might be like a hybrid. Is there any way to actually marry all of these modes of work in order to do it efficiently, or there is only one way to actually achieve the goal?
To achieve the goal, you have just one way. You know, there's a saying between swimmers. You can swim just different types, but you always think in one way. So it doesn't matter how you make it. The same with a sprint. If your sprint is successful and you in time, and you in resources, and you in schedule, everyone is happy and it goes well. But if you are going out of the borders, everyone start asking you, praising you, and you will not continue. So the main goal in these small commons or teams to find people who are so resourceful that they could not just lead the company, but also to help other people. This is the reason why in School of Troubleshooters, we learn so many skills. Because in real life, if you have 5 or 10 people, you couldn't expect that they will be more experienced than you. So you should be the most experienced. And if you're experienced, you will help everyone to achieve result. And then when you have your points, your goals, your medals, no one will ask who has done this job. You as a project manager would be successful, and you will go high in hierarchy.
And probably I could second to that, because there is a one study project that is going on, and the person who's leading it actually showing a lot of good skills and competences in order to achieve the goal. My next question will be, given that the timelines usually quite tight, you work with the different peoples, and what the leader or even the team member of the team need to do in order, if they see that something is not going as fast as possible, for example, they can't get their customers for interview, or the discussion of the prototype is like taking a long time, and there is certain resistance from a different team members or even the external stakeholders, meaning that there are so many risks that actually would be attacking the team, how to foresee them and take the measures to mitigate all of them.
You use very right words, mitigate and foreseen. Usually you should foreseen as that everything bad will happen. And you should understand the difference between have one son or, for example, 20 sons. If you have one son and you're trying to make skiing or swimming or running, you can take the rhythm which is applicable to your closest relative. But if you have like 20s, you should be in the middle of them. So you should look at them who is first, and also look at them who is last. And you should give more impact for them who is going on the last. And in this case, you should understand why they work in not a right rhythm. Maybe you give them hard job. Maybe you give them not enough attention. Maybe you should learn them and work with them, or even instead of them. So first time for sprint, you should understand that there are different type of runners, and you could divide them, for example, in 3 groups. One group running faster than you. You are happy, and they will be winners. Second, work with you in the same temp. They are quite efficient, but they never will become a heroes. And last one, maybe for you and them, this is the last sprint. You should transfer them to another teams who are not so important if you're working in a very resources company and resourceful team.
And I also want to touch a bit more on change management, because in some of the companies, people used to work in long planned cycles, meaning that if you want to run fast and you want to probably change the direction, you will need to convince certain people. By the way, in the tech world, they called hippos, meaning highest paid person. So they would be called hippos. So how to deal with the situation when you need to convince your boss or the boss of your boss that there is a certain sprint needed to be done aside from the main work.
You should never say such a word like agile or sprint or scrum to your bosses if they do not use for these words. For example, if I will, for you as an owner or shareholder, will have a speech and you will hear some new words, you will become hesitating. Is it a person maybe mad? Because you do not want to know how technically something was done. You want to know that it is done. So you're paying the money, but you do not want to dive deeply in the method, in the road, in the way how it was completed. So you should start sprints by your own, in silence, like a partisan. Is it a word as a partisan in English?
Or guerrilla.
Gorillas.
Gorilla.
Yes, correct. Gorillas marketing. This means, yes, correct. So you should work as a gorilla. So you start sprints, and if you have results, you keep it in silence. You keep it in secret. And if someone's after 5, 10, or 20 successes will ask you in, for example, on board or some other teams, you will say, "Come on, nothing special. We just use sprint as usual."
So Sprint seems to be a quite versatile tool, and whether you could use it on some personal life or personal projects.
I live already on sprints for, I don't know, maybe 40 years. First time I start my sprint when I was trying to learn speed reading. I found old magazine, and there were article on 3 pages with several упражнениях, exercises, how to read the text. And I decided if I would make it, for example, for 3 months, maybe I would be the smartest guy in the classroom. And it was my first sprint. It take me like 90 days or something like this, but suddenly it works. Then I was asked if I agree to go for mathematical Olympiad. This is like a competition in math, and suddenly I got first grade on the republic level, and I was taking like also 60 days to be prepared. And then I realized that it is an easy way. If I will be focused for small team, for small something for very short period, and then I will get a great mark and everyone would be happy, my parents, my teachers, and even myself. And even now I take each week as a sprint. I write goals on the notebook, a lot of goals which I do by myself, some with my pupils, with my students, with my employees, and like 11 or 12 sprints I run weekly, and usually 5 or 6 of them are completed well, and other, this is like dead penguins. So they were trying to be alive, but suddenly they were eaten by sharks of the time, of the resources, or lack of attention.
And this experience also probably could be used for other sprints to not to follow the same mistakes. My last question will be how knowing about the skill of sprint could help to make this world a better place.
Maxim, I know you was on the sprint, and I don't know if it was well conducted by me, but in real world, now we started also the project. We work with geoinformational data, and we start also to write some articles and so on, and we use this kind of sprint, but we use a very soft one, without a backlog, without these desks and so on. And as for me, it is given the results, and I like it. You couldn't all the time think about writing an article, or maybe to prepare some introduction, or maybe some exhibition, or writing some program. It is easy to go from one prototype to another prototype. Okay, if I would be a smart guy, maybe I would make everything from the very first time. But for example, all of my programs like antiviruses or hacker editors or archivers and so on, they were rebuilt for several times. So I was starting to do something, and then I suddenly saw the limits, which I couldn't predict before I write that program. So I should step back and take another sprint, but on the a bit higher level.
А мы рассмотрели навык спринт и чем он полезен именно вам. Всем мира!